Welcome everyone to a little bit of light, awaiting Moshiach. I hope the air conditioning doesn't disturb us too much. In the 19th century and early 20th century, Jews in Europe avoided as best as they could being conscripted into the army of the country that they lived in. There could have been a number of reasons for it, and mainly one of the main reasons was the fact that to be able to be an observant Jew in the army was extremely difficult, if not impossible. I want to share with you two stories about Jewish soldiers. And one story that I'm going to read to you comes from a book called Something to Say by Rabbi David Goldwasser. And he brings the following story. Both these stories are going to involve Hasidic Rebbes. And the first story is about the Rebbe of Belz, Rabbi Yeshua of Belz. And he once stayed at a hotel in Vienna for Shabbos. The Rebbe was in the midst of conducting his Tish on Friday night. The Hasidim were gathered together. That's when they come together with the Rebbe, and they sing. And the Rebbe has Tish. That means he has it's called a table, in which the Hasidim gather around and spend their time on Shabbos with the Rebbe. And he was in the middle of conducting his Tish when he paused to listen to melodious sounds emanating from an adjacent room. The Rebbe walked to the door with the Hasidim following close behind. If the Rebbe decides to pick himself up in the middle of the Tish and go somewhere, so the Hasidim, his followers, are going to follow behind without a question. They saw a young soldier sitting at a table, delving into a sefer with great concentration. He was studying Torah, and he was so engrossed in his learning that he was oblivious about what was going on around him in the hotel. The Rebbe waited at the door. Finally, the soldier took notice of him, and when he noticed the Rebbe there, he jumped up and rushed to greet him. The Rebbe asked the soldier his name and the circumstances that brought him to the hotel. The soldier explained that he had been drafted into the army. He had made only one request of Hashem before entering the army, that he would not have to desecrate the Holy Shabbos. He went on to say that he had been blessed because he was appointed special assistant to an officer, and he pleaded with the officer for permission not to work on Shabbos. The officer agreed on the condition that the soldier work diligently and loyally the remaining 6 days. The soldier concluded his words by saying, "I vowed that if Hashem would allow me to keep every Shabbos, then I would dedicate every moment of Shabbos to the service of Hashem and Torah learning." As the Rebbe was leaving, he turned to his Hasidim and said, now listen to this, "Who knows if the Torah of that soldier is not postponing the Geula, the redemption, the coming of Moshiach? Who knows if the Torah of that soldier is not postponing the coming of Moshiach?" That's what the Rebbe said. The Hasidim begged for an explanation. The Rebbe explained, "It is possible that the Torah of this soldier is more important before Hashem than the sacrifices and the divine worship in the future Beis HaMikdash, in the future Holy Temple." That's mind-boggling. The point of what the Rebbe was saying is that this is something that's an important principle about the coming of Mashiach. And that is that as much as we yearn for Mashiach to come, as we have spoken about, so that Hashem's glory in the world will truly be manifest, and that Hashem will receive the honor due to him, at the same time, there is something that happens before Mashiach that you don't have after Mashiach comes. Before Mashiach, as we have studied many times, after Mashiach comes, the recognition of God will be clear to everyone. And it won't be a challenge to serve Hashem. But before Mashiach comes, there is a challenge in serving Hashem. And whenever there's a challenge in serving Hashem, the reward for that challenge is even greater. There's a certain preciousness to when we serve Hashem, when it's difficult to serve Hashem, more than when it's not. So there's something that exists in our service of Hashem before Mashiach comes that is very unique and special that won't be there afterwards. And this is at least to some degree the basis of what the Rebbe meant. This study of Torah, this soldier, his dedication to Shabbos and his dedication to keeping Shabbos, and not only keeping Shabbos but studying Torah whole Shabbos with such concentration and depth. And he's a soldier. This is something that the Rebbe said could be so precious to Hashem, more precious than the sacrifices of the third Beis Hamikdash or the third Holy Temple. The point is to understand this. There is an aspect of our service to Hashem that is unique now. It's called the service of Hashem under difficulty, serving Hashem with mesiras nefesh, with self-sacrifice. Now I'll share with you a different Hasidic story. Okay, now this story took place with the Rebbe Cheskel of Shiniv. The Cheskel of Shiniv was the son of the famous Reb Chaim Sanz. Reb Chaim Tzanzer, the famous Hasidic Rebbe Reb Chaim of Tzanz. And the story goes that Rabbi Cheskel's grandson was drafted into the army. Rabbi Cheskel's son came to his father crying and begging his father to daven, to pray, that this soldier, that his grandson should be able to somehow or another get out from the army. And that was very common, that Jewish people did whatever they could to avoid being conscripted into the army. Many of them changed their last names to look like they're the only child of a different family. It was something that you did to the best to avoid. But listen what Rebbe Cheskel should have responded. He said, "My son, there was a time that I was once visiting with the great tzaddik, with the great Hasidic Rebbe, Remeir Parmeshlan. And he invited me to eat with him at night. And we sat together until the late hours of the night. And the Rebbe's shamus, the Rebbe's assistant, came in and said, there is a Jewish soldier passing through our city with his regiment. And he wants to come into the Rebbe to get a blessing. So the Rebbe said, Remeir Parmeshlan said, bring him in immediately. And after the Rebbe asked the soldier what he does, what he needs, the Rebbe gave him a blessing accordingly. When the soldier left, Reb Meir of Parmeshlan said to the Cheskel of Shiniv, know that Moshiach will come, not in my merit, and not in your merit, and not in the merit of people like us, rather in the merit of Jewish soldiers. The same idea. Their self-sacrifice to remain Jews, at whatever level, is so precious to Hashem that will be the merit to bring Mashiach. Now, if you think about it, we may have a contradiction in two stories. In the first story, the Rebbe said it could postpone the coming of Mashiach, and in this story, a different Rebbe says that's the merit. That's going to be the person whose merit will bring Mashiach. Is it a contradiction? I don't know, but the points are the same. The points is that our dedication to the service of Hashem under all circumstances, even under the most difficult circumstances, is something that is extremely, extremely precious in the eyes of Hashem. Thank you for listening. This has been a little bit of light. Have a wonderful Shabbos.